Hello everybody and welcome back to another Marvel Crisis Protocol roster building video. And for this week's roster, we're going to be actually revisiting an idea I had a long time ago that I never actually really did anything with, of basically building a shield list, but all of the characters, if you're looking at it from across the table, kind of just looks like an Avengers list. And I don't know, I thought it was kind of a fun idea when I built it the first time around, of just kind of being like, hey, how many shield characters are actually just Avengers or would make perfect sense as Avengers characters? And you can build almost, if not entirely, a full roster of 10 where I believe at least 9 out of 10 are cross-affiliated. So that's kind of the idea here, is we're going to be going ahead and doing that. So starting things out, of course, we're going to be looking at shield characters, and of course if you type shield it doesn't actually come up, so I have to use the filters here. So let's do that real quick. If we just go here and we say shield characters only for now, and yeah, we got a lot of options here. So our main leader is probably going, oh, the wrong Iron Man, is going to be this Iron Man here, because he is, a shield leader. But we can also use Steve Rogers, Captain America, if we want to, as an invaders leadership kind of flex there. So yeah, I think we're going to keep our options open for that one and probably include both there. And we're already kind of off to a very Avengers-y start. Iron Man and Steve both being characters I definitely associate more with Avengers than I do Shield. From there, we have a couple other kind of obvious ones we can throw in there, that including Spider-Woman, who, is just in general a really, really good piece, and She-Hulk. Avengers team needs a Hulk, and again, and two more characters that I associate more closely with the Avengers than I do with Shield. So we're off to a pretty good start. That's 4 out of 10 here. From here, I think, a good Avengers team could use a Black Widow and a Hawkeye. We're going to take, of course, 3-threat Hawkeye here, but we have some choice for the Black Widow. We could take 4-threat, but I have a feeling we're going to be pretty 4-heavy, so I'm probably going to lean towards 2-threat here. Just kind of makes sense to me. So we'll go ahead and grab 2-threat Widow, and we're getting a little bit more shieldy with that, but, we're up to 6 characters, and all of them are dual affiliated here. From here, we have a couple options. We could start looking at some duplicates of characters. We could take a second Iron Man or a second Captain America or a second Widow if we wanted the 4-threat Widow option in there as well. All of those would definitely be reasonable options. We could also look at maybe throwing in a Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier, I think I probably actually associate him more with S.H.I.E.L.D. than I do Avengers, but close enough, and he is actually affiliated Avengers, so I think he makes sense. In a similar vein, War Machine there is both Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. This is where we kind of move away from this being necessarily a competitive list, because unfortunately War Machine doesn't tend to be all that great, but he's not bad either. I mean, he can kind of just do his thing from long range, and he benefits a little bit from the rerolls from Invincible Iron Man there, because he doesn't really have anything else to spend his power on anyways, so he doesn't feel bad there, and he definitely kind of fits for the theme. And at that point, what are we at? We're at 8 characters, and yeah, we've managed to do that without duplicate characters or anything like that, and everyone is dual affiliated. So from here, if we wanted to take duplicate characters, we could do 10 out of 10 that are actually Avengers, but I think we can do something slightly more interesting than that, with at least Spectacular Spider-Man here, who I know what they were going for putting him in S.H.I.E.L.D., but he has also been on the Avengers multiple times, so I think just taking Spec Spidey and throwing him in here probably works for that last slot. And then for our 10th and final slot, I guess I just said Spec Spidey was our 10th slot, but no, for our actual last slot, we got some choices, and I'm not 100% sure where I want to go with this. I think there's a strong argument to do 4-threat Widow, just kind of have more options there. 3-threat Iron Man, same deal. If you're running under this Steve, 3-threat Iron Man is still really, really good. Or alternatively, we could go something like Captain America First Avenger and open up actually having an Avengers leadership and making this a properly dual affiliated roster, which in my opinion is the more interesting of the options here. So I think we're going to take that one and really lean into the Avengers, but it's actually S.H.I.E.L.D. of, we can also run S.H.I.E.L.D., but it's actually Avengers if we really want. So I think that's an interesting one. You could throw an argument of like Nick Fury, he could be a kind of thematic splash in Avengers, but I think this one fits a little bit better, especially being an Avengers affiliated character in this game. And then Spec Spidey being our only unaffiliated character means we can bring reserve members and kind of still be a fully affiliated Avengers team if we're choosing to run Avengers. But the idea is most of the time we'll be running S.H.I.E.L.D. So Yeah, again, this one's definitely one of those more thematic lists here, and the character selection was a lot easier for this one than most of our previous installments in the series. But, I think it's fun, and we can't always be doing these as the most competitive things all the time. So, with that said, we're going to go ahead and move on to tactics cards. Okie dokie, so looking at tactics cards here, first things first, we're going to want to look at our affiliated cards, and if the goal is kind of trying to fake out Avengers with this roster, I think Avengers Assemble is almost necessary for that, and if we actually play Avengers, it's going to need that for sure, so Avengers Assemble is pretty solid and probably worth including. As for shield cards, I'm going to be honest, I haven't played a crazy amount of shield personally, so I might be getting this somewhat wrong, but I think Battlefield Medicine is probably one of their best cards, so that should almost definitely be included because it's just so insanely good. So we're definitely going to include Battlefield Medicine there. As for other ones, I mean, there's a lot of cards that they have that are kind of very, very interesting, but they have so many cards it's hard to say. One of my favorites is Sit Rep, so I think I'm going to go ahead and include that because I do just think this is a really, really solid card, and we did already talk about the Invaders Leadership, so we'll go ahead and throw that in there as well. So that gets a couple more slots down. I really, really like Shield Mobile, so I'm really tempted to make that my next one here. And yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and include Shield Mobile. I think that just makes sense. The initiative is really, really tempting because it's kind of the entire idea of this, but we don't have a single character that's not affiliated Shield, so that's kind of pointless. We're not going to bother with it. So from there, I think I feel like there was one more I mentioned that I wanted to include. It's the Avengers one, reserve members. Where is that? Am I blind? Here it is. We're going to go ahead and include that for Avengers as well. And I think that is going to be enough of our affiliated cards, taking up 6 out of 10 slots here. We still haven't grabbed restricteds, and we still haven't grabbed generics. So let's start with our restricteds here. Brace is basically an auto-include at this point, and I think we have enough characters with damage reduction that patch up is pretty solid, or at least really good defensive things. I say damage reduction. Actually, Iron Man might be our only damage reduction. That is, I guess, War Machine as well. So yeah, maybe that's not quite true, but I do think it's still a worthy consideration here. We have lots of characters with good defensive tech. Alternatively, Sacrifice could be really, really nice as well. I don't think either of the Steves that we're bringing with us here have a bodyguard sort of thing here, so that could be a very viable option as well. She-Hulk is here, but a lot of the time Sacrifice will need to be used to save She-Hulk, so things to consider there. I'm going to think on that slot for a moment here, but probably leaning towards Patch-Up right now. All right, yeah, after putting some thought into it, actually, I really like Sacrifice for this. It also just kind of works for the general Shield playstyle, which, I mean, we're not playing too closely with this roster, but it'll be close enough that I think it's still worth having. Next, we're going to need at least one of the Tony Stark cards here, whether it's Stark Armory or Helios Laser. There's an argument for both, but unfortunately, we're taking up so many of our card slots here with affiliated cards, we don't really have the space for both, so I'm going to lead towards, I think, Stark Armory, because I think that's generally what the kind of shield playstyle prefers, with a few more models on the table as well than I would typically be running in like my Avengers, where I run a lot of Iron Man. So I think Stark Armory plays slightly better in this case. Personally, if I was actually running this list, I probably just bring Helios Laser because I just enjoy the card more, but I think Stark Armory is probably the right call. And lastly, we have to pick a restricted because, or sorry, not a restricted, generic, because we could, in theory, throw together some more character cards here, but I think that would just be a mistake with how few kind of open slots we have, because at this point, if you're playing Avengers, you're bringing Avengers Assemble, both restricteds, you have to bring Iron Man for Stark Armory or Spider-Man for reserve members, and like you've still got a card slot open, so unless you're doing both, you're kind of in trouble. So I think we need to have a generic as this last card slot, and there's a few good options for this. I mean, it's kind of the usual suspects for this sort of thing. We could do Recal, we could do Survival, we could do Warpath, all good options. And from those options, I'm really not 100% sure. I think I think most we're kind of too wide. We don't have the characters that are really going to benefit as much from Recal. I think just like power wise, we also have leaderships that take power and things like that. So I don't love that. Survival is pretty solid because we are going to be going wider generally, unless we're playing She-Hulk. So that's not bad. And then Warpath is just in general a pretty useful card, but we have a lot of more ranged characters. So I don't know. This is a hard decision here. I think I'm going to lean towards Warpath. I think it's just kind of the most generic of the group here. That you'll find a good reason to play it in pretty much every game. So yeah, I think I'm going to go for that one, but I don't think any of these would be the wrong choice necessarily. So yeah, we'll go with Warpath for now, and I guess we'll go ahead and move on to Crisis selection. All right, so going into Crises, one thing we do want to consider is that we don't have a safe grab, so we definitely don't want anything where we're going to be punished too heavily for that. Obviously, Namor would be an affiliated safe grab, but he doesn't quite fit the theme. I don't know. I personally don't really associate him with the Avengers. I'm pretty sure he has been on the team a couple times, but like, who hasn't? So yeah, I personally don't associate him there, and he's not affiliated there in this game, so we're not including him. But that does make this choice a little bit harder, and I don't know. I think there's some solid options for us here. I immediately after saying we don't have a safe grab, I don't want to punish us for it. I'm kind of eyeing cubes because I think the extra power is really, really nice for our team, especially with things like the reroll bubbles we can have from Iron Man. So I do really like the idea of cubes. Shield in general is known for being good on hammers, but I don't think we're running half the models that like it, but we are running some that do, so I think hammers is probably my next pick. And then from there, I'm not really sure. Maybe just Montesi. Again, we're kind of being punished for not having a safe grab, but most of the time, if it's our extracts, it means our opponent won, so that, they were going to safe grab the middle one anyways. And I mean, at that point, we probably want something that can score parity better. So something like Senators just doesn't feel great for us. I don't think I don't think we're quite wide enough for Senators, and we don't really have anyone who can grab them without risking being punished. We do have some reasonably bulky models, so maybe it's not too bad. Paranoia, we're definitely getting punished on, so that's not great for us. And yeah, this is kind of the weird thing with MCP's extract game right now is they're not they're not great if you don't have a plan for them. And like hammers is probably one of the only ones where you can more safely score parity most of the time without a safe grab, and even that one you can be punished pretty hard. So this is an awkward spot. I kind of leaning towards Senators, weirdly enough. We have a lot of kind of like damage reduction models that can hopefully take the hit. It's going to be a rough one on certain matchups, but in the matchups where it's roughest, we're definitely going wider than our opponent, so we'll still probably be outscoring on it, so it might be fine. I'm not 100% sure. We'll see, but I'm going to include it because I think it's at least interesting, and we do have some really solid objective piece models that can play all three of these scenarios pretty well, so yeah, we'll go for that one. The other one I was kind of considering is Skrulls, because we do have a couple long movers who can safe grab the middle Skrull, but they wouldn't be able to get the side ones, and that's where we potentially get punished really, really hard. So I'm not too sure how I feel about that. So we'll go with Senators and move on to Secures here. For Secures, I don't think we have the type of shield list that's going to really benefit from their kind of typical favorite Secures. A lot of the like down the middle stuff, demons, that sort of deal, I think is going to be really bad for our sort of list, because at the end of the day, it is more like an Avengers list than it is a shield list. It just kind of has some of the kind of shield ideas and, of course, the shield tactics cards. So we got to kind of look at it from that mindset. And looking at the characters that we had available to us, I think we have a pretty solid range game. So if we're doing something where we can kind of just score parity for a little bit and just kind of plink them down, nickel and dime them, we can definitely play that game really, really well. We have some safe grabs too who can kind of run, or not safe grabs, we have an extract steal in Spider-Woman is what I'm trying to say, who can kind of like run over to the other side, interrogate, steal objectives, that sort of thing. So we can kind of play that sort of game if we want to. So for that reason, I'm really liking Infinity Formula for this. Again, we also just have like, Iron Man rerolls and things like that, that'll really benefit from that kind of same logic as Struggle for the Cube. So I like Infinity Formula a lot. From there, not 100% sure. I think the B map is probably fine for us if we want to go with Mutant Madmen as well. Mutant Madmen can make a lot of sense for kind of the same reason of we'll just be able to kind of score that every round, and we just won't have quite as much power, but that's kind of fine for us. I think that one could be interesting. Other ones that I would consider, we definitely don't want Scoundrels. We do have too much range for that, so we don't really want to play around with that. We don't have a crazy amount of mobility things, so Intrusions could be interesting for us, but it's really going to put us in an awkward spot with kind of how the first turn is going to play out. We're definitely going to either be scoring down or be potentially really heavily punished for just playing on a C map. So not sure how I feel about that one. Deadly Meteors is interesting. I like it a fair bit. I mean, that's kind of just a personal thing, is like I, as a player, really enjoy Deadly Meteors. I don't know necessarily if our list does, but I think it's an interesting one. Sword could be really neat as well. We kind of play it the same way we play Infinity Formula, but we have the mobility on a handful of our characters to really rotate the points nicely and still get work done. So maybe I'm actually really liking the idea of sword. So maybe we go sword, and then I think I've kind of talked myself back into Mutant Madmen here. I think I like that more than any of our other options here. So yeah, that I think is a solid. We basically took all of the rectangle shaped extract or secure maps here. So yeah, that doesn't really surprise me. I think that works out pretty well for us. So yeah, that'll be our three secures here. Man, this list would definitely feel competitively better if we were able to squeeze Namor in, but didn't fit the theme, so not doing it. Alrighty, and that brings us to the final list here. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with how this has turned out. Very, very similar to my old version of the list. As a matter of fact, it might be basically identical. Not 100% sure, wasn't actually using the old one as a reference. I was just kind of scrolling through some old lists to get ideas for what I wanted to do this week. So yeah, this I think is remarkably similar, though. I might have used like a different Widow or something like that, or maybe someone else was here instead of Winter Soldier. But yeah, I think you can basically take almost any combination. Like, let's just look at breakdowns here and kind of see what it's giving me. Well, everything's going to be Shield affiliated, but we'll just make sure it's enforcing a leader. And we can look at basically any breakdown here, and it'll look closer to an Avengers list than a Shield list. Like this one, maybe I'm thinking more of like a Black Ops sort of Shield operation, but they're still all Avengers sort of situation. And yeah, going through these, like we can look at some higher threats as well, and I think it's going to be even more telling at like 20 threat of just like, yeah, that's just an Avengers roster there. Like same with like this, or yeah, these are all just Avengers rosters, especially once you get Cap in there, and having two different versions of Cap for that as well. These all look like Avengers rosters, so I think we've succeeded in the kind of goal there of having pretty much any assembly of models you can throw on the table for this is going to look like an Avengers roster, but is actually a Shield roster, and I don't know, I just think that's kind of fun. So yeah, from there we're going to move into Team Tactics cards, and from here we have two Avengers cards. We got Avengers Assemble and Reserve Members, although the idea is most of the time we will be playing Shield. So we also have four Shield cards. We got Battlefield Medicine, Sit Rep, the Invaders Leadership, and Shield Mobile. And then for restricted cards, we have Brace and Sacrifice, just generically good ones. Stark Armory for Iron Man, no other character cards included here, although there definitely would have been some good ones to consider, maybe instead of some Shield cards or instead of Reserve Members if you're trying to build something resembling this for a more competitive setting. And then Warpath, because that's just a generically good card. Speaking of building this for a more competitive setting, I think the first things you'd probably want to change are actually make it a dual affiliated roster, not like a, we threw this character in here to make it dual affiliated, but you probably just kind of build around that. You take out stuff like War Machine and probably She-Hulk, and you put in stuff like Namor and maybe Fury, and then you just kind of have the Steve pivot open to you, and for the most part it is just a Shield roster. That is how I would do this if I was trying to do this more competitively. So if this is something that like you really like the idea of kind of being able to show up at the table and have your opponent have like two totally different directions on the way your list could be hitting the table, that's kind of what I would do for approaching this. But regardless, for now, we're going to go ahead and look at the crises we selected for this version of the list, and I am pretty happy with these for the most part. The extracts are a little awkward with that third slot, but we have Struggle for the Cube, Fear Grips the World as Worthy Terrorized Cities, and Mutant Extremists target U.S. Senators. And then for our secures, we have Infinity Formula Goes Missing, Sword Establishes Base, and Mutant Madmen. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with the secures for that one. The extracts, again, I like 2 out of 3 here. Not crazy how I feel about this list performing on Senators, but wasn't really sure what to do there. I think there's a few options that would have been okay, and this probably wasn't it, but I'm sticking with it. But yeah, that is going to do the list here. So definitely let me know how you guys might have done something like this differently down below, whether you'd be building it more for competitive or more for the theme. If there are characters you might have thought would have fit better. I didn't look at the Avengers list of characters, so maybe there are Avengers characters that are like, oh, that totally should have been in S.H.I.E.L.D. Actually, a good example of that might have been Carol 2. Carol 2 was definitely one of those models that like me and my locals when they were being revealed were like, oh, that's going to be a Shield character, right? That's definitely going to be a Shield character, and we're very surprised not to see that. So I think Carol 2 might have been a better pick for like Winter Soldier or War Machine maybe. But either way, I think I got the idea of this one down pretty well. So yeah, definitely let me know down below if there's any other characters you guys think would have made a good inclusion for a list like this, or how you guys might have done this more competitively or something like that. But otherwise, that is going to do it for me for this video. So I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you did, please do drop a like down below. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, helps me out a bunch. Lets me know you guys are enjoying the content we are throwing out here. And yeah, that's going to do it for this one. So until next time, have a great day, everybody. Peace.